Good morning, Broncos Country. Welcome into Good Morning Broncos. Make sure you're sitting along. You got yourself a nice fresh cup of hot coffee as you get the latest hot things that's going on with the Denver Broncos every single day here. Mile High Sports on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel so you never miss out on the morning conversation weekdays, Monday through Friday, 9 o'clock a.m. This is the place to be. If you want to know what's going on with the Denver Broncos from a daily basis, I'm Cody Roark. I cover the Denver Broncos on the beat here, Mile High Sports. I attend every practice. I attend every game. And looking forward to bringing these insights to everybody in Broncos country in a time and in a world where there's a lot of misdirection on what's going on. You see a lot of overreaction here at training camp. I have detailed notes that I take every single day at practice, so I try to give my best observations with my background as a player, as a coach, as someone who's been around the football administrative side of things. Good Morning Broncos is a daily go-to here for you. So let's talk about it. This is a big week here for Broncos country, as we obviously talked about in Monday's installment of Good Morning Broncos. Preseason is here. The Broncos will play the Cardinals on Friday, NFL Network locally on 9 News if you have that. But this week isn't necessarily about building up for the Cardinals game. It's not necessarily game planning about the Arizona Cardinals. It's about doing things from the Broncos standpoint, according to Sean Payton, is doing the things that they've been working on and mastering it. Now you get a different look. You get to go against an opponent who's got a different scheme that you have yet to see so far throughout practice. You're going against the same defensive scheme every single day, which for the Broncos defense, it's been a little bit of a challenge so far for the offense until the last 3 days in a row of practice that they have had. The first 8 days, the defense has won the day, but the last 3 days of practice, the offense has gotten better. They've found their rhythm and groove, and that's something you love to see because you need that coming into this year with all the question marks surrounding Russell Wilson based on his performance last year, the Broncos offensive line, the changes that they've also made, and Sean Payton coming in as the head coach. There has to be something brand new that maybe takes over because look, the Broncos have had this back-to-back losing season taste in their mouth. And Sean Payton, the hope is that he's a guy who can come in and change that a little bit here. So Friday's preseason game, not necessarily about the Cardinals, more so about the Broncos as they have gone through and they continue to go through install here as Sean Payton puts his stamp all over the Broncos offense. But we get to evaluate players. Look, I love practice as much as anybody. I think practice is very valuable. And I think that how you practice, in a sense, determines how you're going to play, right? If you're making these mistakes in practice, you're more than likely going to make them during a game. And I understand that people, going back to the Vance Joseph when he was the head coach here, when he would say we had a great week of practice, things come up. Like practice situations are definitely different than game situations. But I think one thing we've seen so far from Sean Payton is that a lot of the practice structure has real football simulations, stuff that you will actually see during games. You're going to be tested with situational awareness. And for example, during Monday's practice at the Centura Health Training Center, it was a third down emphasis with some red zone sprinkled in. And look, I would say the offense for their third consecutive day had a good period. So let's open up. Let's dive a little bit deeper into that. But first off, we'll start with our Day 11 Broncos camp recap that I put together for Mile High Sports from yesterday's practice. Check it out. It is game week as the Denver Broncos prepare for their first preseason game against the Arizona Cardinals on Friday. For this week, Sean Payton wants the team to focus in on the little things from game operations, situational awareness, and being able to just carry over into a new game day routine. This is Sean Payton's first game as the Broncos head coach here in the preseason with the new staff, so there's a process that he is going through right now to get a better idea what Friday's going to look like. But let's go into Monday's practice. Open to the media only. We saw another efficient day from Russell Wilson and the Broncos offense as the emphasis was third down and red zone once again. During the third down period, Russell Wilson was perfect from a passing standpoint as they dealt with various situations, third and long, third and short, third and medium. That was an area where the Broncos struggled massively last season. Payton taking extra time to work out the kinks on that side of the ball. Overall efficient day there from the first team offense. Now another period too. They got into the red zone here once again. The Broncos offense had a very efficient outing there. Russell Wilson getting the ball out of his hands quickly and Michael Burton coming up with a touchdown, but moving the ball downfield methodically, negating a little bit of the pass rush that has been impactful so far through the early parts of training camp. They'll be back on the field on Tuesday in front of fans here at the Centura Health Training Center. Make sure you check out milehighsports.com for more. I'm Cody Roark. And that's what you want to see, the offense continuing to stack days. I said it yesterday, and once again, 3 days in a row from a practice standpoint, the offense has had efficient days. And I want to go back to that Russell Wilson-led third down period here for the Broncos. The first team, second team, third team offense, they each got a try at this period here at practice. But for Russell Wilson, where did we see the Broncos struggle at massively last year? Third down. Third down, they were ranked 32nd in the NFL, dead last in third down conversion efficiency. They led the league in punts last year. That has to change this year under Sean Payton. And so far, from the situations we've seen at practice, there were times where the Broncos and Russell Wilson, they were in a 3rd and 11 situation. They were in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 3. You have these different situations, and you adjust based on what the defense is throwing at you from an offensive standpoint. And from a defensive standpoint, it's okay, hey, we know that the offense has to get to this marker right here in order to pick up a first down. So how do you balance that in terms of a defensive side? Well, let me give you that perspective first here. As a defense, you understand, okay, hey, 3rd and 7. Well, my safety should probably play at the sticks here at this situation because they have to get here. But you have to play the fine line because even though they have to get 7, they could go deep on you. They could go short and then get yards after the catch to pick up the first down. So it's about trying to find that balance of playing too tight versus too loose in your down and distance. It's understanding situational awareness, but also for the defensive backs in the secondary, how do you adjust to the splits of the wide receivers? Are they spread out? Are they tight? Are they bunched? Or is there motion? How does that adjust your coverage? If, one guy motions from one side of the field to the other, these are things that impact maybe your coverage call, your communication, and you have to be able to get all that within a millisecond of it happening. You see movement, you're automatically thinking, okay, hey, he's moving to my side. If it's a twins formation and it trips, how do I adjust? Am I changing my coverage? Do I cover number 1? What happens if the motion guy goes all the way outside? Does my coverage shift from him to a different guy? I mean, these are things that you think of in your head from a defensive back perspective. But for the offense, it's about, hey, we need to get, if it's 3rd and 7, we need to get 7 yards. And Russell Wilson was quick with the ball. He was decisive. He got it out of his hands during Monday's practice, connecting with Brandon Johnson on one play, connecting with Jerry Jeudy on another, and even picking up, it was 3rd and 11. He connected with undrafted rookie free agent wide receiver Taylor Grimes out of Incarnate Word, and he's had a very under-the-radar, significantly strong camp, right? He's obviously not a big name. You look at the receiver room here, there's a lot of names that a lot of Broncos fans have their eyes on, and rightfully so, that are ahead of Taylor Grimes, but Grimes is the type of guy. I was joking at practice with Andrew Mason. I say, hey, make sure Bill Belichick doesn't see any tape on this Taylor Grimes guy because he's going to become the next Julian Edelman or Wes Welker. He's a very, very talented player. And Sean Payton even talked about it as well post-practice following Monday about Grimes, talking about the traits that he has. He's got the ability to create separation. And I've watched Grimes in one-on-ones just win almost every single matchup he's gone against, including he's won 2 matchups against Justin Simmons when they do that group 9-on-7. And then on the other side of the field, it's one-on-ones with the receivers and the defensive backs. So you love to see just different guys stepping up here. But ultimately, we get a lot of evaluation from internal stuff at practice. For us, the game on Friday as media members, and I think for you as fans who are watching the game, it's very important that you differentiate what you evaluate with practice versus what really matters in a preseason game. So what do I mean by that? I think if you're going to evaluate the preseason, it's not necessarily about wins and losses. I know fans sometimes, look, you want your team to win no matter what. That's perfectly understandable. But what matters the most in the preseason is how do you progress as a team? Wins and losses are going to happen in the preseason. But for me, if you're going to evaluate things how I do, and it's about what you do well within the structure of your offense, within the structure of your defense, your special teams. What do you want to avoid? You want to avoid penalties, which has been something that has impacted the Broncos in a negative manner. I asked Broncos head coach Sean Payton on Monday following practice, what is it that he's looking forward to seeing with his guys specifically as they prepare not only for Sean Payton's first game, but this is a new staff. All these players, it's a new experience for everybody all across the board this week. What does he want to see from his guys? Here's what he had to say.
I think more specifically to your question, you want to see, hopefully you want to see guys that are playing full speed and they know what to do and you're able to evaluate them versus a different scheme. We've been seeing the same offense or defense, so now we see a different opponent. Hopefully mental errors are reduced, and it's a game always with mistakes, so I keep talking to them about getting on to the next play. That's important. Probably just as easy to answer the question as what I don't want to see. I don't want to see 10 guys in the field. I don't want to see uniforms off after we're done playing, sunglasses on, Gilligan's hats on, interviews during the game. That's what I don't want to see. But we'll communicate all of that.
And as we know, the starters will play here in the NFL preseason. I always think it's important that you get some evaluation. Now, I'm the type of person who's on board. I can see it from both sides. If you don't want to play your stars in the preseason, I certainly understand that. If you do want to play them, I also understand that as well. But here's what Sean Payton had to say realistically on Monday. It's not about length, right? Because usually sometimes we see in the preseason, okay, starters will play a quarter in the first preseason game. They usually play a half in the second one. Sean Payton says he doesn't view length as his measuring stick here for how much starters are going to play in the preseason. It's about the amount of snaps. And he believes that the volume range between 15 to 18 snaps in a first preseason game is what he needs to see. Now, here's the weird part about that, right? If it's 15 to 18 snaps, let's say Denver's first drive on Friday with the starters on offense, let's say it's a 12-play drive. Well, you're going to get 12 plays. You're probably going to get maybe 3, maybe 6 or 7 more plays after that if you're lucky before he pulls you out there. And I think for me in preseason game number 1, the expectation I think we should have is, does the offense show improvement in terms of urgency, right? During Monday's practice, they had the play clock going from 40 seconds and it was counting down consistently through all the periods that they were doing offensively. And it was to get the ball out of the hands. Like, get to the line. I mean, break the huddle, get to the line and get the play going there. Versus last year, I mean, it was to the point where fans were counting down the play clock in week 2 to try to make the offense aware of, like, hey, you only have 1 second to get the snap off. You better get it going. Sean Payton is very attention to detail in these areas, and I think it's important that that's something we see here on Friday's game. But also, how does the offense manage? Do they move the ball down the field? Do they avoid going 3 and out? If they go 3 and out on their first drive, it's not the end of the world. We shouldn't read too much into it. In these 15 to 18 plays that we're going to get on offense and defense from a starter standpoint is, what do these guys do in these reps? Is there any takeaways? Are there any major breakdowns? Are there any big plays? There's something that they did really, really well. You have to highlight that. But let's not get to a point, though, where we're nitpicking what happens in the preseason. I always like to remind folks, the year that the Detroit Lions, they went 0-16 in the regular season. You want to know what their preseason record was? It was 4-0. It doesn't necessarily matter. Like, winning is fun. You like to see it. But you also, at the end of the day, it's about the big picture evaluation of your roster, your personnel, what you're doing. And from a coaching standpoint here, here's what Sean Payton's looking for. Do you know what you're doing on offense or defense or special teams? Do you know what your rotation is going to be? Because there's 90 players on your roster right now. Players have to be aware of that. And I think that's going to be a great thing that we see here in week 1. Will it be the prettiest? Maybe not in the preseason. But if there is some things that Denver does really well, if they can avoid some of these mistakes that impacted them in the regular season last year, you can get some of that stuff out of the way here in the preseason. But it's not going to really be a true determining factor until you get to the regular season. You get about maybe 3 or 4 games into the regular season to where you truly understand, okay, hey, this is maybe the trajectory that this team has. Something to keep an eye on here. But Broncos Country, make sure you go pour yourself another cup of coffee as we continue our conversation on this morning's Good Morning Broncos. Tuesday and Wednesday's practice will be available to Broncos Country in attendance before the team has a light travel schedule on Thursday. They get to Arizona, and then they play on Friday. They'll have a little bit of a walkthrough on Thursday as well. But let's hear from our friends over there at Superbook Sports.
We're changing the game. Help your bets stay hot this summer at Superbook Sports, the most trusted name in sports gambling with a direct line to Las Vegas. And now, when you use the promo code MILEHIGH, you score up to $250 with their first bet bonus. Win or lose, Superbook will match your first bet up to $250 with promo code MILEHIGH. Download the Superbook Sports app, enter the promo code MILEHIGH, and you'll get $250 courtesy of Superbook Sports. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700.
With millions of page views every year, ColoradoPreps.com is the #1 source for the high school sports community to keep up with the latest news and scores. From football and volleyball to basketball and softball, ColoradoPreps.com provides a year-round hub for coaches, friends, and family to stay connected to their favorite schools and athletes, and keep an eye on their rivals. Covering high school sports from the peaks to the plains, you always get the latest at ColoradoPreps.com.
What are some other news and notes from Monday's practice at the Centura Health Training Center that we need to keep our eyes on here? Well, over the weekend, Saturday's practice, we did not see outside linebacker Frank Clark in attendance at practice. We had no idea. There was no real definitive reason, according to Sean Payton, as to why he missed, and he said that he expected him to practice on Monday. Well, Monday's practice came around. Frank Clark was back out there on the practice field. Randy Gregory, who tweaked his ankle a few days prior, was back out there and a full participant in what we had seen at practice, generating pressure against opposing quarterbacks. And the thing I've really liked so far about training camp is that you're getting your second string, your third string guys really good looks against a good pass rushing unit like Frank Clark, Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito, and even Randy Gregory getting in the mix there. But you're also switching up at other positions, right? You know, your offensive tackles are getting looks against those guys. Well, guess what? Your first team offensive line gets to look at guys that are second string, third string. You're rotating it. It's about platooning and seeing if some guys can step up to a bigger role against starting caliber players here in the National Football League. We have saw that quite a bit with Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito, Frank Clark, Randy Gregory getting mixed with other units as well. But even Greg Dulcich, I would say, has been very interesting so far here throughout Broncos camp as he's gone through different rotations. He's rotating with the first team, the second team, the third team offense, because I think Sean Payton really wants to get him as much reps as possible in this newly established joker role that he's looking forward to seeing maybe how he fits. I mean, there's times we do see Greg Dulcich in line with his hand in the dirt. There's times we see him lined up in the slot. There's times where we see him lined up on the outside. There's times where we see him move around a little bit. And for a player of his speed, his athleticism, and the potential that he has, you have to be able to do a little bit of everything, including blocking. And I would say that is one area I've noticed Greg Dulcich probably taking the biggest stride of his game is in the blocking department, being more physical, because it is a requirement here for Sean Payton for what they want to do, because the offensive identity needs to be able to run the football, open things up in the passing game. And you've seen that identity kind of formulate through the last several days of Broncos practice, especially with Russell Wilson and the first team offense turning in 3 consecutive days in a row of good performance. Some other highlight performances that I want to touch on here in this morning's Good Morning Broncos is cornerbacks Jaquan McMillan, undrafted rookie free agent a year ago out of East Carolina, and also Delonte Hood, who was on the practice squad a little bit late last year for the team. Both players during Monday's practice had several pass breakups or good plays on the ball, whether that was in the third down period, red zone, or even in one-on-one situations. And I'm excited in particular. You may know me. I'm a defensive back. I played cornerback my entire career for 12 seasons, and I'm very biased towards the position. That's probably the one position I want to watch the most here during the preseason in week 1 against the Arizona Cardinals. Some other names to throw out there too. Fayon Hicks in the mix there. Art Green, Fabian Moreau, new addition who came over last week here at practice after Riley Moss had the core muscle surgery there. But the defensive back room right now from cornerback to safety, I think, is filled out relatively nice. You have a good combination of guys who have athleticism, speed, some height, some strength and physicality involved there. But it all has to kind of fit under the umbrella of what the Broncos defense needs, and that's to be aggressive, and that's to force takeaways this upcoming season. And I think that's a huge emphasis here under Vance Joseph and his defense this upcoming year in Denver. But some other things I think we need to highlight. I think it's important that we talk about the offensive line and how they're gelling and growing a little bit more together as each day passes here at Broncos training camp. The first 8 days, they saw nothing but pressure from outside linebackers. They saw interior pass rush pressure from Zach Allen, DJ Jones, blitzing linebackers. The communication seems so much better here on the offensive line the last few days. And naturally, that's something I think that we expected to take some time because it's a new offensive scheme. They're still going through the install. You have to understand maybe how your responsibility changes based on the defensive lineman or outside linebackers alignment on you. Where's the linebacker lining up here? Zach Allen had talked about what Lloyd Cushenberry, Quinn Miners, and even Ben Powers' new addition have done. And they've given him some great looks. They've given the defense some really good looks there. But for me, from my observation, the communication between that unit has been better. The offensive line communication across the board has been vastly improved, at least to the naked eye. You have to see how it looks during the regular season when you're going to face tough opponents. I mean, like I said, the defense knows at times what the offense is doing based on the formation that they're in. The offense knows what the defense is doing sometimes based on the coverage look that they're giving pre-snap. And you have obviously a smart quarterback in Russell Wilson, Jarrett Stidham, Ben DiNucci. These guys know how to read defenses. So a changeup, I think, will be good. It gives us a little bit more room to evaluate, okay, where's this particular position room at so far after the first preseason game. These are things I'm going to be monitoring and watching here at Mile High Sports this week. But Broncos Country, I appreciate you tuning in to me this morning. Make sure you had yourself a good breakfast. If you're getting ready to head to Broncos camp, better get there soon. I'll be there at 10 o'clock a.m. Mountain Time for the start of practice. And if you see me out there, please come say hi. I love interacting with everybody in Broncos Country. If you take time out of your day to watch or to listen to me, well, I can make time for you. I appreciate you so much. But we'll be back tomorrow for a brand new episode, Good Morning Broncos, as we will recap Tuesday's practice in Dove Valley.